All right, it's perfect. Yes. Oh, so no, don't worry about it. You can keep going. I will figure
All
it out
right.
and edit.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm Jon Rennie, and I'm a business leader first and foremost. But I started my career as a naval officer on nuclear submarines. I was right outside of college. I finished college and I went right into the Navy, and I served on the USS Tennessee, which is a nuclear submarine that carries ballistic missiles. I served for 5 years at the end of the Cold War. And once I left the military, I spent 22 years in corporate America. I worked for 3 global companies. I ran 8 different manufacturing plants. And about 6 years ago, I left the corporate world. I started my own business. I run a manufacturing business called Peak Demand. And we produce products for electric utilities, mostly in the US. We do sell to some abroad as well. So yeah, I've been leading people for more than 30 years, and I've written a couple of leadership books. I got a third one on the way. I just sent it to the editors this morning. So I like to talk and write about leadership, and a lot of it reflects back on my time in the military, my time on a submarine, and how that's helped me in business over 30 years.
No, I see. I see. So I would like to, before we get to your expertise itself, I would like to start at the origin, because that's kind of where myself and a lot of my audience are at. Most of us studied engineering, and not all of us thought about going into business or necessarily going into management. But what was that process for you? At what moment did you know, I don't want to simply be involved in the technical side of the corporation, but I also want to be in management and leadership in a business?
So this might surprise any of your listeners who are engineers who go into the work world, is that I didn't necessarily want to be an engineer. I saw engineering as a means to an end. So I had a dream and a desire as a, even into before high school and into high school, I had a dream to serve on nuclear submarines. That's it's kind of a funny thing, when you hear about, little kids, they say, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a police officer. I want to, they have these crazy, I want to be an astronaut. So they have these crazy dreams, and, most of them never do those things. But I had the crazy dream is I wanted to be on a submarine. I wanted to be a submarine officer. I had my 2 grandfathers served in World War II, and I always heard their stories about service, about the adventure that they went on. I mean, obviously it was a high amount of risk, but I was always fascinated by what they did in their lives. They did really meaningful things. They did some pretty amazing things. And for whatever reason, I always got on the subject of submarines and the submarines in World War II and all the kind of missions they went on. And I was like, man, I want to do that. That's really cool. But I grew up in New England. I grew up in New Hampshire, and it's like nobody from New Hampshire, becomes a submarine officer. I mean, it's just kind of like a weird thing. But I decided early on that's what I wanted to do. And I went, and I started researching what does it take to get into a job like this. And, everybody has to be trained in nuclear power. You have to be, I say you don't have to be, but it's, if you want to, the high likelihood of you getting on a submarine and being a submarine officer, you have to be an engineer. It increases your likelihood. So I said, well, all right, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to study engineering. I don't know anything about engineering. I come from a blue collar family. Nobody ever went to engineering school. So I had to figure out what was engineering and how do I get into engineering school. And so, yeah, it was a means to an end. So I went to Worcester Polytech, studied mechanical engineering, and did really well. Did good enough to get into the Navy, get into the submarine force, and eventually I got to do my dream job. I served for 5 years, driving submarines, and it was everything I had hoped it would be. And was someone asked me once, like, what is your definition of success? And I say this is, when you work hard for years to accomplish a goal, and it's that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes, that 15 minutes where you sit back and say, I did it. I achieved my goal. That's success to me. It's not about money. It's not about fame. It's about sitting back and saying, I accomplished this really difficult thing. And we're talking, decades of work to get to this one goal of, and I'll tell you the story. I was in, we were doing torpedo shots off the coast of the Bahamas, and I was sitting in the Caribbean. It was evening. I was the officer of the deck. We were on the bridge. We were surfaced, and every star in the sky was out, and I could see the Milky Way. And I looked up and I said, I did it. I achieved my dream. I achieved my dream. I am doing what I wanted to do as a kid, and I'm it. I'm doing it. And so, yeah, that's to me was success. That's to me. So for me, it was a means to an end. And you had to start as a young officer in the engine room. You had to become qualified in the engine room to understand every valve, every motor, every system. You had to know that backwards and forwards. So I had to do that so that I could eventually sneak to the front of the boat and get to drive the boat and do all the cool things that a submarine does. And by the way, that's what I did in my civilian career. So I started off in engineering. I was a design engineer, and I started in the engineering department in engineering, but I always wanted to work my way to the front of the boat. So I would started there, and I learned everything I could. And then eventually I became the quality manager for one factory, and then for the division. And then they wanted me to go back in engineering. I was the engineering manager for the division. And then a plant came open, a manufacturing plant came open, and they were making products that I was like an expert in. And they were like, you're the one guy that has all this knowledge to lead this plant. And I'm like, I'll go, I'll do it. And so I got my first manufacturing plant at 32 years old. So, and I got a chance to go from the back of the boat to the front of the boat at 32 years old. So really it was 5 years out of the Navy, and I was leading my first factory. So it's pretty cool to get a chance to move from engineering to the front of the boat. So, yeah, so some people go to engineering and they love engineering. They want to become the best engineer. I never really had that passion. I really wanted it. It was sort of a means to an end for me.
I see.
Yeah.
For me, at the time when I started studying engineering, it was more of I felt at the time that I could learn most of the other fields on my own when it came to business, but engineering was so technical that I felt like it was something I had to learn in a school. I didn't have the highest passion for it, but I enjoyed seeing numbers in action.
Yeah.
So that was really good for me. But there was another side of me that came to understand what it took to take an idea to the level of a project to production. That made me understand that knowing engineering alone is not going to be enough to do this.
Yeah.
So that kind of brought me a little closer to the world of business, understanding the legal side of it and everything, and the kind of the ecosystem that you have to have a general understanding of before you can even actualize some of these ideas. So now I enjoy really talking to people with experience who come from engineering, because I feel like they can relate more to the story I'm telling.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would say this too. I mean, and I'm a little biased, but I really do think that engineering is a great foundation if you're going to go into business, especially if you're doing technical products like what we do at our plant. Is that I have this really strong engineering foundation. So nobody can kind of pull the wool over my eyes when it comes to products and how we test them and how they work. Because, you have that natural skepticism as an engineer. You're like, nah, that doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah.
And so I really think that it's been powerful for me, having led technical teams for so long, is having an engineering background. So I can just have enough, obviously I love math and science and all that sort of thing. I had to, and I do like all that, but just having that foundation just gives you that little bit of, I don't know, maybe it's like a spider sense when anything technical and someone tries to pull the wool over your eyes, you're like, that's not how
that's
that
a
works.
little fishy.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the other thing is, like, you in business, you're into sales, right? You're selling all the time. I'm selling my company to investors. I'm selling my product to customers. I'm selling my ideas to my employees. You're in a selling process. And especially when I'm selling to customers a technical product, a lot of times I'm selling to an engineer who's got like, this thing has got to fit in his system and work fine. So he's going to ask you a question that's not in the brochure, right? It's not in the product portfolio or product, sheet.
Yeah.
So having an engineering background, it's like, oh, that's an off the wall question. And I just happen to know that because I've thought about that as well too. So
Yeah.
I think it really does help you in business as well. So having that background.
Nice, nice. Because yeah, I didn't. It's not that often that I've seen sales staff with an engineering background, because usually the my experience in the in the engineering field is that we tend to have a challenge communicating our ideas, and to see an engineer who's able to do that,
Yeah.
that's impressive. Because I
Yeah.
remember even the books that we had to study from, who wrote this?
Yeah. No, it's a real challenge. Engineers and accountants, even I would say, tend to be introverts. So they like to work on problems and numbers, usually by themselves, and they tend to be introverts. And I would say that probably in the early part of my career, I was an introvert as well. I liked, I liked solving problems. I liked working hard on something. But when I got my first plant, I mean, there's 140 people that looking at you all the time, right? You're on stage all the time. And so I recognized right away that I had to become an extrovert to be successful in this assignment. So I almost forced myself to be that. So I wouldn't spend time in my office. I spent a lot of time on the factory floor talking to people. I had monthly all employee meetings. I had monthly roundtable meetings. I got out there and I spent time with the people. And now it's normal for me. I'm an extrovert now. But I remember those first few years going, oh wow, all these people are depending on me. I can't just be in my office with the door shut. I got to be out. I got to be out and about. I got to know. I got to learn. I got to listen. And so I think we can, as engineers, become extroverts, and it is I think you can change who you are. It takes some time. I would say in the beginning it wasn't natural, but now it is natural. But yeah, now I'm an extrovert. I do public speaking all the time. I teach at universities. I speak in large audiences. I write books. I podcast. I mean, I guess you would say I'm an extrovert now. So
Yeah. Would you say it came as you practiced, or it was a shift in your mind?
yeah, so I would say it was both, right? I shifted my mind, so I say made the decision that I was going to be an extrovert, and then I practiced it and practiced it and practiced it to the point where it didn't even it felt unnatural not to be an extrovert to the point, right? So I remember I came to a new factory. I got a factory assignment. I said, when do you normally do all employee meetings? And like, we don't do all employee meetings here. And I'm like, well, we're going to start doing it now that I'm the plant manager. We're going to start having all employee meetings. And like, it was unnatural for me not to have that, that front, time in front of employees and talking. So yeah, eventually becomes, it's like habits, right? If you want to do anything, start doing it. And, maybe it's hard in the first, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, like drinking water is a hard one for me, but but I just started doing it, and then I just made it normal. And then to the point where I don't even think about it anymore. It's like I have this large thing of water and I carry it everywhere, and I know I've got to drink 4 of those a day. And that's just my mindset now. Habits then become what you do in the rest of your life. And I think being an extrovert is like that as well. You have to think, okay, I'm going to do this. It can be done. And then you got to practice.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Actually, there's something you said earlier that I kind of want to touch on one more time. It's when you express that feeling of that starry night, when you realize you achieved, when you at least told yourself, yes, this is what I wanted and I got it.
Yeah.
How after that did you, because that sounds like a big goal, almost a lifetime type of goal.
Yeah.
How from that point do you set the next goal that drives you forward?
This is a really good question. So what do you do when you achieve your goals at a young age? So think about sports athletes, right? A lot of athletes achieve, they have their pinnacle moments before they're 30 years old, right?
Yeah.
They win a high school championship. They win a college championship. They get recruited to a college. They play some sports at a high level in college. They make it professionally, right? They get picked onto a team. They win the Super Bowl, right? Or
Yeah.
which we're about to talk about. And tomorrow's the Super Bowl for as we're
Nice.
recording this, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do when you achieve your goals at 26 years old, right? This is what happened to me. I achieved my goals at 26 years old, 25, 26 years old. That became a problem for me because I got out of the military and I didn't have a goal anymore. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. My whole life was about achieving my goal of being a submarine officer. I did that. I checked the box. I was fully qualified as a submarine officer, met every criteria. I had achieved my dream. They have this thing called the gold dolphins is a pin you wear on your uniform. It represents a qualified submarine warfare officer. And when those were pinned on my chest, I had achieved my goal. So so I got out of the military and I started working in corporate America. I was a design engineer, because I had an engineering degree. What am I going to do? Well, I'll go do engineering. So I was designing products, and I mentioned earlier, I moved up quickly. I got to run my first plant at 32 years old. And I loved it, but it wasn't my passion. I still didn't know what I was doing. My wife said I was being dragged, kicking and screaming up the corporate ladder. So I just kept getting more and more responsibility. But it was only because I worked hard, I was smart, I was learning, but I didn't really have a plan. Like I didn't want to be like, I'm going to be CEO one day, or I'm going to do this. I had no plan. But I would say, so I did that job for a while, and then I was hired by another company to run 2 manufacturing plants up in Ohio and Pennsylvania. So really big operations. And one of them was up in Ohio. And I remember one night, it was a winter night in Northern Ohio. I had to go talk to the third shift employees. And it was a snowy night. I mean, lake effect snow was coming horizontal, freezing cold. I had an SUV. I was driving to the plant. The snow bankings on both sides of the road were as high as my car. It was miserable. It was cold. This plant was a really old plant. It was drafty and cold, and like on a windy day, a night like that, it was still cold inside the plant. And I remember going up to the room where we were having our all-employee meeting for the third shift employees. And I was exhausted. I was tired. I was frustrated. This plant was losing money. It had been neglected for years. It needed a complete turnaround. And I remember I went and there was a crappy old coffee pot outside the meeting room. And there was some hot coffee in there. I think it was like 3 a.m. And I'm just like, all right, I'm going to drink this crappy coffee because I'm tired. I'm exhausted. So I went into the meeting room and our quality manager was presenting. And as I sat there, I looked down at this miserable cup of coffee. There were things floating in it. There was oil sheen on the top. And I thought about my life at that point. I had 2 master's degrees. I had an undergraduate degree. I could be anywhere in the world. I thought about all the great companies. I could be working for Apple or Microsoft or all these great companies, working in a heated and air conditioned office, drinking some Starbucks latte or whatever. But here I am in Ohio in the winter, in the middle of the night, drinking the worst cup of coffee I'd ever seen in my entire life. And it was at that moment, that very moment, that I realized this is what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to help the people that were in that plant. I wanted to help them turn around that business. My passion became at that moment manufacturing businesses and helping them turn around struggling manufacturing businesses. I realized that night that I found my new mission in life, and that was to lead manufacturing businesses and do that. And I've been doing that the rest of my life. So, but it's interesting because it's funny where your passions or your goals come from. As a young kid, it was simple. I looked up to my grandfathers. I wanted to serve. I wanted to do this amazing adventure, like being on a submarine. But I didn't know what to do after I accomplished that goal. And so I would think, so for the people that achieve your goals, before you're 30 years old, I would just encourage you to start exploring different things that you might be passionate about And eventually you're going to have a night like I had, and you're going to find your passion. You're going to find the thing that you were meant to do. They say the two greatest days of your life are the day you were born and the day you realize why you were born. And that night I realized why I was born, which is to do what I do, which is lead manufacturing businesses. And so that's what I've done my whole life. And, and I was so glad I found my passion. I'm so glad I found what I wanted to do in life. And yeah, and that's what I've been doing, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, that's very well explained. Yeah. And I I spent a summer working in a manufacturing plant. We were manufacturing plastic bags at the time, and I had the chance to just see what it, because I'm from West Togo in West Africa, and I grew up in Gabon, and I didn't grow up looking at these. First, business is not conducted the same way, and the scale is not even comparable.
Right.
But having the chance to see a manufacturing plant that works 24/7, and when it stops, you can quantify how much money it's losing, or even when a machine is stops, you
Oh,
can
yeah.
quantify that loss. I
Yeah.
didn't, before I experienced it myself, I couldn't frame that, but that
Mm.
that experience really made me look at how tough, how challenging that aspect of business, especially in the manufacturing industry, is, because you also have to keep a staff, your staff motivated as they're doing very repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, from your experience, how do you keep people who are, I don't know exactly how it happens in your warehouse, but in some manufacturing plants, I know that the staff is not necessarily making the greatest of checks, because it's just a matter of economic value. But how do you keep that base staff motivated to keep the quality on point, to come with enthusiasm to work, and to feel like they're part of a community more than this is just a job I'm doing?
Yeah, well, the answer to that question is the answer of leadership. That's how you do it is really, really important. And that's why I write about what I write about and do what I do, because it is really about leadership is about is motivating a group of people to do amazing things, right? That's really, at the end of the day, that's what leadership is about. And one thing I've always, maybe because I come from a blue collar background where nobody in my family went to college, I was the first to go to engineering school. Everyone I knew, my father, my grandfathers, all were blue collar workers. And I think maybe I had a passion for blue collar workers. I had a passion for the people that were on the shop floor. And I didn't look at them as, well, I'm more important than them because I'm the factory manager. I looked at them as people. They were husbands and fathers and wives and sisters, and they were people with stories and people with goals in life, and people with desires and things that they wanted to do and achieve in their careers and their lives. So I guess maybe I approached it from day one. My first factory is I approached it as, and I write about this in my book, I say leadership is a people business. I treated everybody with respect, and I treated everybody in the best way I could in terms of treating them like a relationship, like you would a brother, like you would a cousin or an uncle, and I got to know them. I got to know their names and their families, and their kids and their passions, and I think that was a big part of it. But I think the biggest thing that I did, and I learned this, I had read a book by Ken Blanchard called Gung Ho, and it's a small book, and he wrote it probably a long time ago, but it's a great, great little book. It's a parable. It's a story about a factory turnaround, and he teaches some principles in there. But one of the principles in that book is worthwhile work, right? We all want to be doing something worthwhile. We want to know that our work matters. And when I went my first manufacturing plant, I'd walk the shop floor and I'd talk to people, and I asked them, "What do you do here?" And they said, "Well, I plate this part. I make sure it's clean. I make sure it's gone through its heat treat process, and then I put it through the plating." And I said, "Well, what does this part do?" And they said, I don't know. I just played it and I sent it to the next operation. And I noticed that as I talked to people, they were very skilled in their craft, but they didn't know what they knew what they were doing, but they didn't know why they were doing it. They didn't connect it to the bigger picture of what we were doing at that factory. And I remember reading in that book that people need to understand that what they do makes a difference. And we all want to do that. That's one thing. We as humans want to belong. We want to belong to something, and we want to know that what we do matters. And I began to realize that the people in my plant didn't know what they were doing, didn't know that the work that they were doing mattered. And I started connecting the dots with that. So at all employee meetings, I start talking about what our product actually did in the industry. I talked to how the circuit breakers that we made at this plant were powering hospitals. They were powering children's museums. I went through and looked at some of the customers we had. They're powering children's museums. They're powering supermarkets. They're powering schools. And when I started telling that, you could see almost people sat up straighter. They were like, well, I didn't know that. And so we started saying that, the work that you do, you're keeping the lights on. You're making sure that doctor can perform that surgery, that teacher can teach that class, that business can open the doors. You are doing that. You personally are making the products that keep the lights on. And when we started connecting their work to the bigger mission, the sense of pride kind of changed in the shop. It was almost like they felt like they were part of something special, and they felt like they were important. And I treated them like that they were important. And I constantly told them how what we did was important. And I think once they made that connection, I would say attitudes and it really changed in the shop. People realize, and the quality got better too, as they realized what I do matters, and their quality got better. I'll tell you the story. In Paris, right? What's the big cathedral?
The one that burnt a few years back.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm forgetting that.
Notre Dame, I believe.
Yeah, the Notre Dame Cathedral, right? So there are gargoyles on the Notre Dame Cathedral all along the top of this, right? And if you ever get a chance to tour and get close to them, these things are little miniature works of art, right? And the people that built them they spent so much time making sure they were beautiful. The quality was absolutely perfect. Yet no person would ever see those gargoyles. They're so far up that nobody can see them from the ground. But the workmen that made those, the artists that made them, they knew that their work mattered. They knew that God would see those gargoyles, right? And so they knew it was worthwhile work. So they put their effort into that, and they made the quality just right, so that they knew God would see their art, even though man would never see it. So that's kind of the mindset of, like, if you know your work matters, right, you're going to put more effort into it. You're going to put more quality into it. So I think that's a big part of what we did to connect employees with the work that they were doing and why it mattered.
I see, the connecting them to the bigger picture, because as you're speaking, I was trying to see what could be the parallel. Is it the parallel, at least that I've made so far, is it because sailors and I don't know if that's the appropriate word, but sailors on a submarine are so connected to the ideal of defending the country that they're hyper dedicated to their individual task? Would you say that's kind of the same idea that you're trying to integrate with people in your manufacturing plant?
Yeah, so this is where a lot of the mindset comes from, is my time on the submarine. Because the time on the submarine is very interesting, because we operated alone. So a lot of military units work with other units, right? Like ships work in fleets, and submarines are really unique. We go out in the ocean alone. And so we work hundreds of miles from any support vessels, and we're hundreds of feet below the surface of the ocean. So we are surrounded constantly by our enemy, and the enemy was sea pressure, right? The ocean wanted to get into the boat and wanted to send us to the bottom of the ocean. The ocean did not care about us, right? So we had to work as a team, right, to be able to complete our mission and get home safely. So everybody was important in accomplishing that mission and getting us home safely. So if the most junior sailor turned the wrong valve, we would all die. If the captain made a wrong decision, we would all die. If a junior officer like myself made a wrong call on a maintenance procedure, we would all die. So there was a shared responsibility for the mission, but there was also a shared vulnerability. We all had to have each other's backs. Otherwise, we'd all die. We were in it together. Nobody, not, like in a battle scenario, if you have 50 troops, one could get shot. On a submarine, in a battle scenario, we all die. There's no one dies. We all die. And it's that mindset that the most junior person is still important for your mission. That always sat with me. And so I always thought that was important, that even our most junior employee in my factory was really important for me to achieve the mission and the goals of the business. And I have to make sure that person is trained, that person understands how to do their job, that they know that they're cared for and they're respected, and they, they're given everything they need, all the tools they need to be successful, because their role matters. And I see a lot of bosses, I would say not leaders, but bosses, look down on people who are blue collar. They look down on the young person. They look down on the junior person. And I never have looked down. I've always said, every person is important, because that mindset came from the military. I spent 2 years of my life under the ocean with sailors and who had my back and I had their back. I can't unplug from that. That's in my brain. That's in the way I operate today.
Yeah. Because as I was trying to get ready for our conversation, I tried to compare at least some of the videos that I watched and the things I heard you say. I tried to compare both experience with. I've had a lot of challenges building startups, trying to align everybody's mind, everybody's understanding, and demand that level of excellence from everybody. I haven't been able to translate, at least I haven't been able to properly communicate that idea. And I was really curious about, and you just explained it in many ways. I was really curious about how you explain it to sailors. Is it simply the fact that we all know that we're in danger if one of us makes a mistake, And actually brings me to my next question. What does it mean to earn your oxygen? That was really curious for me to read.
Yeah, I think, and that's really important, especially if there's young people listening in on this call or on this podcast, is, in fact, I'm going to be speaking 2 weeks to high school seniors, and the message to them is going to be based on this earn your oxygen concept. So what I'm going to, the name of my talk to these high school seniors is Don't Be a Nub. So let me explain what a nub is. Okay, on a submarine, before you receive I mentioned the gold dolphins that I wore on my chest. I was a qualified officer. Before you earn those dolphins, earn your warfare pin, you are considered a nub, a non-useful body. You are wasting the oxygen for people who are useful, right? You're eating the food that belongs to people who are useful. So you are a non-useful body. I actually interviewed a British submarine commander on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he goes, if you are not qualified, you are just a passenger on the submarine, and the submarine has no room for passengers. I love that. So that mindset of earn your oxygen. So what that meant was, when you got to the submarine, you were unqualified. So you had to go through a rigorous qualification process. What that meant was, in the Navy, they gave you this large book of it's called a qual card. And you had to go around to experienced people, experienced sailors and officers on board the submarine, all from the stem to the stern, and you had to prove that you had competency in that weapon system, in that hydraulic system, in that electrical system, in that nuclear system. So it took about a year after you got to the boat to be able to be fully qualified on every system. So for me, it meant like sleepless nights, long days. I mean, just reading manuals and talking to people and just And it was like nonstop doing whatever it took to be qualified so it could earn my oxygen, so that people could depend on me to do my job properly. And I would have the other sailors' backs, and they would have my back. So there was a high level of positive peer pressure in the Navy to get qualified, to earn your oxygen, to be able to say that I'm no longer a nub, right? I'm no longer a non-useful body. And so my discussion with the high school seniors is, I'm going to say, don't be a nub, don't be a non-useful body. And what do I mean by that when it comes to, young people going into the world? Well, I say this is, don't be a consumer, be a creator. And I think about that all the time when it comes to social media, right? You can, TikTok, for example, it's highly addictive. You can just sit there and flip, and you next thing you know, 3 hours are gone by, and you've had a few good laughs, but you've done nothing. You consumed. You didn't earn your oxygen. You consumed a lot of oxygen, and you didn't add any value, right? And so my mindset whenever I'm on social media, for example, is that I want to create more than I consume, right? And I think that's the reason why I have a podcast. That's the reason why I've written books. That's why I talk to people, is I feel a pressure to create more than I consume, to help more than to take away. And I want to see more of that in especially in young people, right? Is that we could easily, the way the world is right now, you could easily consume your way through life, whether it's food, whether it's social media content, whether it's going to bars, and you can consume and you can have a fun life. But what are you doing to add? What are you doing to put your dent in the universe? What are you doing to change an industry? What are you doing to teach one person a really critical skill? What are you doing to pass on some knowledge? And I guess that's what it really comes down to, is what are we doing to earn our oxygen every day as people, as leaders, as engineers, as students? What are we doing to earn that oxygen versus just consume it?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. They're very lucky to get that talk. I wish I got it when I was in high school.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And I think this is the next question is pretty fitting, because as you're trying to be net positive in the world, you may not know exactly the repercussions of everything you're doing, or you may not have all the skills required. What do you tell to how do you confront somebody who fails?
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's by carelessness or simply by lack of knowledge.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We have a weird view on failure, don't we? Like, nobody wants to fail. It's embarrassing, right? It's it's social media is a great example. We don't ever show our failures. We show our highlight reel, not our blooper reel, right? We're showing everything. Look at me. I'm traveling here. I'm doing this. I'm doing this great stuff. But they don't see the behind the scenes where you struggle for years, right? It's like people who gamblers, right? People that win money in Vegas. You always hear about how much money they won, but you never hear the stories of how much they lost, right? And so we have an unusual perception about failure as people. So we think everyone around us is succeeding and we are failing. We're struggling. We're the only ones that are struggling. Everyone else is winning. That's the message we see in the world.
Yeah.
And I would say just the opposite is true. We all are struggling. We're all facing failures and challenges. But to me, I had a guy on my podcast, wonderful gentleman. He's in fact, you should look him up for your show. His name is Colonel George Milton. He's retired Army colonel, and he has a book. It's called "Failure Is Not the End," or "Failure Is Not something." It's something. He talks about failure. I can't remember the exact title of the book, but George Milton, he was wonderful. He struggled his whole life. He struggled his whole life in school. He was always, he failed even when he went into the military. He struggled. And then he ended up becoming this highly decorated Army colonel. and he had so much success, but he just basically in his message is like, failure is not the end, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of change, right? It's where, when we fail, we have a visceral reaction to it and we learn. It creates a deep process for learning. If we take those opportunities to learn what happened, figure out how to get better, and then take that next step. And that's what George did throughout his career. He'd have these massive failures where people would say, you need to quit. And he would say, no, I need to learn. This is just the beginning of the process, not the end of the process. And I think that's the mindset that we have to have about failure too, is that it's not the end, it's not fatal. It's just the beginning, right? It's the beginning of where we say, okay, well, that didn't work out. And I would say this with regard to decision-making, I worked for a CEO that his name was Percy Barnevik, and he was my first CEO when I went into the civilian world. And he was all about, he said, you need to be decisive. You need to make quick decisions, right? And if you're wrong, then you fix it along the way. So instead of getting paralyzed by, analyzing things to death before you make a decision, he said, make your decision quickly. And if it doesn't work out, if there's some failure, you adjust it quickly and you move quickly. So the quicker we make decisions, the quicker we fail, the quicker we can learn and make that adjustment to the next level. So I think people who are afraid to fail and they're just like, oh, I don't want to make a mistake, I want to make sure this is perfect, you never get that chance to learn. You really need to move quickly and experience failure, and you got to use that to fuel your next your next decision, your next action. So failure is a wonderful tool. And I remember I read this article, I think it was written, I think the quote came from the founder of LinkedIn. He said, if you're not embarrassed by the first iteration of your product, you're not moving fast enough. So I love that, because I think, especially as an entrepreneur, if I look at our original products we launched when we first started our company, they were bad, they were ugly. And we showed them off at trade shows. Hey, look at this, right? But guess what? We were at those trade shows. We did learn. We learned that there was some design problems with our products. We fixed those along the way. So don't be afraid to fail. In fact, failure is probably the most important thing we do. If you're running around not doing anything because you're afraid to fail, then you're never going to do anything. You're never going to accomplish those big tasks. And so, yeah, failure is just a super important part of life. And I don't fear it. You never fail. You just learn. And I think that's the mindset you have to go into every big thing you do.
That was a message just for myself, that whoever is watching, this wasn't for you. That was for me. Yes, because I had some early failures in college that kind of pushed me into this mindset of overthinking everything, thinking that basically, I think I fell for the whole Sherlock Holmes archetype, where you believe that the successful people already have the final picture in mind, and they have the math, the step-by-step behind it. Whereas it's really figure it out as you go, if I could say that's the right thing to say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Nobody's got it all figured out. And the people that say they've got it all figured out don't have it figured out. I guarantee you. Do you name one successful person? I was just thinking about I heard him on a podcast, Jordan Peterson, right?
Yes.
When I listen to Jordan Peterson, I'm like, this guy's got it all figured out. He's read every book. He's thought about these things deeply. Well, he struggled recently with he was addicted to, I don't know what, some sort of
some type of anti-anxiety medication.
Yeah. But I just hearing him talk about it, I'm like, wait a second. You mean this guy who seems like he's got it all figured out doesn't have it all figured out? None of us do. So I think instead of thinking that everybody's got that they had a perfect, that's another thing too, is we look at successful people and they say, well, they must have had a perfect plan. They executed it perfectly to get there. No, there's no one in history that's ever done that, ever. Or maybe if you're a monarch, maybe, you were born into it, maybe, I don't know.
I guess, but definitely what you say brings a lot of, you're not the first person to say it to me, but I believe what makes you saying it to me more impactful is the fact that I know that you've been in situations where lives were at stake, and because that's really where it's challenging for me, because I think when you have that level of responsibility, when there's so many lives that depend on your decision making, how do you still your mind and focus on the task at hand?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is goes back to training, that you have to sort of, go back to your training. You have to have enough reps that it becomes second nature to you. They talk about it with NFL quarterbacks. They say that the longer they do it, the game slows down for them. So the things, they can see what's really happening the more and more times, the more reps you have. So I think it's with anything else, the more practice you have, the more reps you have, the more that you don't think about the decision, you sort of react because you've trained so hard that you know exactly what to do in every situation. Like a reactor scram. So one of the things that we have to deal with on a submarine as an engineering officer is the reactor shuts down, like for whatever reason, many reasons why the reactor can shut down. But suddenly you lose propulsion, you lose your ability to make power. Everything, can go dark if you don't take action. I've done a reactor scram recovery so many times in my career that I don't even think about it. I literally, the words just come out of I don't even think. I just react because I've done it I did it so many times. So I think that, making life or death decisions, it didn't come on day one, right? They didn't put me as a junior officer, like, okay, make some decisions about life or death. No, it just, you build up to it. You have smaller roles, and we stand these, what they call under instruction watches, where you learn from a more senior person. I think just over time, then when you get in the role, you practice, where it just becomes natural. You don't even think about it. Well, the truth of the matter is that as a submarine officer, what we were doing, how we were doing it, it was best not to think about it.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah. It has to, I guess you have to practice it until the level where it becomes more instinctive than anything, right?
100%. Yeah, it had to be instinctive. Otherwise, you can't hesitate. I mean, it was so quick. You had to make decisions so quickly. I'll give you an example. So we went to periscope depth, and we took the submarine to periscope depth. We used sonar, passive sonar, so we listened to the ocean, right? Before we went up to the surface. Whenever we were on the surface, we were more vulnerable than under the water. So we listened and we listened. Okay, I don't hear any ships anywhere, right? So then we start slowly raising the submarine to periscope depth. And what the officer of the deck does is we take the periscope and we point it towards the surface, and we spin. We actually spin the periscope around, and we're looking, and we're taught to look for shapes and shadows. Just look for anything that could be a sailboat. See things like a sailboat, a shipping container, a log. There's tons of things in the ocean that could damage our periscope, damage our submarine. So we're looking for anything that could potentially harm the submarine. So the entire team inside the control room is listening to the officer deck as you do these searches. So one person's on the periscope, the officer deck, he's doing these searches, and everyone else is just listening. They're just listening. And they're all trained that if I say anything, that the word they're waiting for is for the periscope to break the surface, and I make enough rotation and I say these words: no close contacts, which means there's nobody around.
Yeah.
The team inside the control room is trained that if I say anything else, they take the submarine back down again. They're trained instinctively. So if I go, oh crap, or other things, or like, what the hell is, anything I say, yeah, they just react and they take the boat back down because there's something wrong, because the officer deck didn't say no close contact. So that's just the idea of instinctive reaction to, because we didn't have time for me to explain, hey, I think there might be a log up here.
No.
But if I say anything other than no close contacts, they take the boat back down to safer depths. And I think that's the kind of reaction that we would have. Yeah, absolutely.
One thing, the thing that comes back in the last few questions is really that matter of speed of decision making. How do you, because the bigger, I've been studying corporations for a while now, and I'm trying to understand how, because one of the key advantages of startups, for example, is the speed of execution. But how do you not lose that speed in communication when you have such a complex organization, such as a manufacturing plant, for example?
Yeah, I think, again, I go back to my first CEO, Percy Barnevik. What he did was he empowered people. So he tried to put the level of decision making as deep in the organization as possible. So he would give people the authority to make decisions for their local businesses and for their local departments. And I've always done that as well too. I want my people to know that they can make decisions on their own, because if you try to make every decision, if you want every decision to go up to the top before it's made, then you're going to slow the organization down. So you want to push decision making down to the lowest point possible. So this is really important. There's two words in the English language which are confusing to people, and I'll just talk what they are. It's authority and responsibility. So in the world of leadership, this is my belief, and I write about it in my books, is you can delegate authority, but you can never delegate responsibility. This is really critical to moving fast. So what does that mean? So what it means is that the people that work for me, I delegate, I empower them to make decisions on their own, right? But ultimately, I'm responsible for their decisions. If something goes wrong and they make a mistake, I'm responsible for that. And I can never delegate that responsibility. That is my responsibility. I am responsible for the business. But I empower my people. I delegate authority. So what I like to say is you can delegate authority, but you never delegate responsibility as a leader. And when people know that they have the authority to make decisions, but you have their back if something goes wrong, right? Then they will move quickly. They will feel like they're empowered to make decisions, and my boss has my back if I make a mistake. That's really important. So, and a lot of times, I saw this in corporate. A lot of corporate bosses do just the opposite. They delegate responsibility, but then they keep the authority to themselves. So if anything goes wrong, they say, "Oh, you're responsible. You made a bad decision. You're going to get fired," right? But yet they force their people to go to the boss to get approval for anything that they do. That's wrong. So we've got it backwards. So you have to delegate authority, but you never delegate responsibility. So that's always helped me move fast in my organization. Is that I'll give you a quick example from the submarine world. So the Soviet submarines, in the Cold War, yes. The Soviets, whenever they would do something drastic, they would go to periscope depth first. We always knew they were going to do something fishy when they went to periscope depth, because they were talking with Moscow. They were getting on the radio and say, "Hey, we're about to do this. Can we do it? Can we please do it?" So they would go get permission, because they didn't, the authority wasn't delegated. They had to go to Moscow to get permission. So every time they went to periscope depth, we'd all go, "All right, something weird's happening here," right?
Yeah.
But just the opposite. American captains never had to ask permission. We knew what the mission was, and we were told to carry it out. So we never went to periscope depth and asked permission. We knew what to do. So the Soviets always said that they didn't like American submarine captains because we were completely unpredictable. We would do whatever we felt was right in the situation. We wouldn't have to go ask permission to do it. So we were much quicker in making our decisions. So and that's a great example of where, when you don't delegate authority, you end up having a bureaucratic organization that has to ask permission for everything, and that's not good. Yeah.
Because I mean, that's been my personal experience, just being around these hyper bureaucratized organizations.
Yes.
Where for the simplest thing, I mean, even recently I was talking to a friend about flying to our home country and how many signatures you had to get on. I mean, that's a different problem.
Yeah, it is terrible though.
But it reminds me, a question that I read over here that I want to ask you is, how can business leaders run their companies more like submarines? More like submarine captains, sorry.
Yeah. So, it kind of goes a little bit to what I was saying earlier, which was this authority and responsibility. And I think so the captain, this is interesting, and I don't know for your listeners if they know this, but on a U.S. naval vessel, whether it's a surface ship or a submarine, if you hit anything, if you ran your ship aground, you hit a buoy, you ran it into a pier, the captain loses their job and the officer of deck loses their job. There's no questions asked, right? Everybody knows this. So even if the captain is below decks and he has somebody else who is standing watch, he's still responsible for that boat, for getting it, out to sea and back home safely. So what does that mean? So if you're responsible for the entire ship, but yet there are times when you won't be driving the ship, that means that you are also responsible for training and developing your people so that they know what to do in every circumstance. So the reason why the Navy fires the captain if it runs aground, even if he wasn't on the bridge at the time, is the message is you are not just responsible for the driving the ship at the moment. You're responsible for training up and making sure everybody that works for you knows their proper role in the organization. So part of leading like a submarine captain is making sure that you have that all your people in the roles in your company know what they're doing, and they've been trained on what to do, and they know what to do when things go wrong. And ultimately, if anything goes wrong, you take responsibility for their actions. So that's a bit of what that means.
I see. It actually reminded me of a question. What exercises are because in my opinion, one of the greatest exercises in bonding is boot camp for people who choose the service. But how do you translate those bonding exercises to a civilian business, to a startup better?
Yeah, you're hitting something that's really, really unique. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot more and starting to write about more. This idea of shared purpose is unique, and you see it with like firefighters, you see it with military units, you see it with some sports teams have it. Really high performing sports teams have it, and what it is this shared sense of purpose, right? So you are all working towards a common goal, right?
Yes.
You're working to win the Super Bowl. You're working to win whatever the common goal is. And so one of the things that's unique about the military is, like you said, like boot camp, you have this shared experience where everybody goes through something very difficult, right?
Yes.
And so at the end of it, you stand shoulder to shoulder with people that have done difficult things with you. You now have a shared purpose. And so part of that is I'm trying to think about the ways that we can do that as business leaders. How do we build that shared sense of purpose? It's one thing to say, here's the company's mission, this is what we want to try to do in the world, and that's great, and you can communicate that, and that's great. But how do you get where every employee feels passionately about achieving that objective or doing that? And I think part of it comes from helping define who you are in the world, like what, and I think part of it is spend time listening to customers. If you have a startup, right? Who are your biggest fans? Right? Who are your biggest fans of your product? You're launching a product, say. Who are the biggest fans of your product, and what do they say about you? What is that? What's special about you, right? And that begins when you start listening to that. Or why do customers buy your product over someone else? Ask those questions. What is that? And as you learn those things, you start saying, well, this is who we are as a company. We are, for example, Starbucks. They're not a coffee company. Well, they are a coffee company, but if you look at their shared purpose is to create an atmosphere, an environment where people come together. They have a place where they call it the other place, right? So you have work and you have home, but Starbucks is creating the other place. And so they learn that from their customers, that I love Starbucks coffee because I go there and I can do work. I have a quiet place. I can enjoy a cup of coffee. You have great Wi-Fi. You have, scones or whatever. And that became and so they said, we're going to build this great other environment for people. And so the employees I want to be part of that shared purpose to create a special environment, this other environment for people. So it's not, we make coffee like Dunkin' Donuts makes coffee, but Starbucks makes an atmosphere. They make a special place where people can go. And I think that's creating that is something that we did in the military. We create a shared sense of purpose. I think you can do that in companies too. And it's not a fully evolved thought, but it's something I'm going to be writing about more and thinking about more.
Yeah. That is, I really struggle. I really struggled with that idea. I seriously did, because with time, I grew to understand. I stumbled on this article that spoke about officers being leaders in the world of business, and it was comparing their performance as leaders compared to civilians who had the same function. And at the time I had the understanding that maybe I should learn more from officers to apply some of their understanding and experience to the business world. But certain things that make the service so special are almost, or not impossible, but they're very difficult to translate to the world to the civilian world, because there's not that, I won't say coercion. Coercion is not the right term, but there's not, it's hard to have all your entire team dedicated to this task when they all have different stakes in the company, or there are different stages in their lives, or the information flow in your organization is not the same to everybody.
Yeah.
So it's been a very difficult problem, and I've hoped to ask men like you to educate me more on the topic, to see if I can either get the solution from you, or if you can inform my research to get me closer.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Experience is a funny thing, right? So there's a lot of things you can bypass in life just by hard work, but experience is one that you have to be there to get it. You can't shortcut experience. I'll be honest with you. When I ran my first manufacturing plant at 32 years old, I look back at those days and I'm embarrassed I didn't know a lot. I made a lot of mistakes because I didn't really know what I was doing. And now, having done it for a long time, it's so much easier now because I understand people and I understand. But I think one of the things you're keying in on, and one of the things that we did well in the military, is aligning our personal success, aligning our personal mission with the organization's mission, the Submarine's mission. My mission was to serve my country, right? And I did that by working with the crew of the USS Tennessee to achieve their mission, right? To remain undetected and be prepared to launch our missiles when called upon, right? So I got to achieve my personal goals, right? Remember I talked to you about my dream was to be a submarine officer. I achieved my personal goals while achieving the company's goals, the mission of the submarine. So I've always believed that if we can best align our employees' goals and dreams with the goals and dreams of our company, then we have that magic. Then that magic occurs. Then you're like, my captain didn't have to yell at me to study and to be the best submarine officer I possibly could, because it was my personal mission to do that. And so when we can do that with our employees, when we can get them to align their personal mission or understand what their personal mission is, and we align that with the company's mission, then we can be more successful. So it sounds easy to say. It's really hard to do. It means that you have to know your people. You have to spend a lot of time with them, and you have to spend time talking with them, like, and listening for those little clues, like, well, I've always wanted to go into marketing, or I've always thought that I could be a good salesman, I'm working in engineering now, but I really want to learn quality. Quality is something that I've just wanted to get involved with. So, and to me, those are all like little data points that when you're having those conversations, you keep putting in the back of your head, because now you might have an opportunity in the business, like, oh, our quality manager just left the company. And I remember that Susan had some interest in quality. And you go talk to Susan. It's like, look, Susan, we're gonna have an opening here. It's quality manager role. I know you mentioned to me at one point you wanted to get into quality. Or do you have some interest? And then suddenly she's like, whoa, yes, and this has been my dream, my desire, so you see what I'm saying? When you connect your employees' dreams and aspirations with the company's needs, then I think you can get some magic to happen. It's not easily done, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's like, I've done this well many times, but I've also screwed it up many times. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but that does, if you go into it with that mindset, then it does help. I love, the Chick-fil-A. You're in Texas. You guys have Chick-fil-A's right there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So founder of Chick-fil-A said, Kathy Truitt said, we are not in the chicken business. We're in the people business. So we don't make chicken, we make people. And so that's something to think about as leaders. You don't, like, I don't make electrical products, I make people. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, in Kathy Truitt's belief was that he wanted the store managers to understand the hopes and dreams of every one of their employees. And sometimes it was not to stay at Chick-fil-A. And so they helped them with college scholarships and ways that they could achieve their ultimate dream in life. And it may not even be at that store. And that's kind of interesting if you think about it. So what if, your employees' dreams are to not work at your company anymore, right? Well, why not help them achieve their dreams? What do you think they'll talk about your company if you help them achieve their dreams, even if it's not inside your company? Well, they're always going to talk great about their past, past company, their past bosses. You need to do business with this company. They treat people with respect. They help me achieve my dreams in life. Why not? Why not do that? It's something to really think about, because we tend to think that as business leaders, we say we got to accomplish the mission. We got to make a profitable product, right?
Yes.
But in the military, they taught us it was the mission and the people. So you're responsible for both. And so when we have that mindset that we're responsible for the people, the mission and the people, we start thinking a little bit differently about the people that work for us. And I think that's something that leaders, and when we embrace that and we start listening more to what our employees' hopes and dreams are, I think we can help make that connection between the company's needs and the hopes and dreams of our employees. And when we do that, like I said, we don't have to manage them. They're on their own. They're going crazy because this is what they want to do in their life,
Yeah. That is definitely something I'm going to try to meditate on a lot more, because there's something there. There's definitely something there to bring those things into alignment probably has more value than having trying to force everybody to comply simply.
Yeah, no, forced compliance doesn't work. We're seeing that in Canada right now. So.
Yes.
Look, it's human nature. I don't even care about, we won't even talk about what's going on with this, with the virus and the response. But at the end of the day, people are people, and they don't like being told what to do. And when you tell people what to do, right, instead of compliance, you get defiance.
Yeah.
And so this is what we're seeing play out in Canada, regardless of your political opinion. That's what you're seeing play out. People are saying, the people in charge say you must do this, and the people say, no, we won't. So
exactly. What would you say in that case, not to get political at all, but in that specific case, what would you say is the failure in leadership that we're witnessing?
Yeah. So I wish I could remember the quote exactly, but it was a French poet that said something to the neighborhood of if you want to build a boat, right, you don't gather up people, tell them to get lumber, get nails, get everything and bring them together. No, you tell them to hope and dream about life on the sea. So you give them a vision that they all can understand. So you establish such a vision that it empowers people to work, not based on you directing every little aspect of it, but that you built a dream big enough, a vision big enough that they follow that vision. So I think the failure in some of these cases, when a leader has to mandate something, it's because they fail to establish the vision. They fail to establish why the importance of that task. And so instead they say, like a parent would do, the kid says, Dad, why do I have to do it? Because I said so. And that's the worst thing. When you get to the point as a boss, when you say, because I said so, you have failed to build a big enough vision for the future. And so you've failed as a leader. And so you have to default to mandates. And when mandates, and again, like I'll say, when you force compliance, just leads to defiance. And that's happened in my career. Not political. I'm just saying, in my career, when I've had to force something, people will just say, nope, I'm not doing it. So just, be careful with that.
That actually brings me, in your personal experience, what has been your greatest failure as a leader, and how did you bounce back from it? What did you learn from it?
Yeah, the biggest was, a lot of my learning came in my first manufacturing plant, because there was just so many things I screwed up. But I remember thinking when I got the job, 32 years old, first, youngest general manager in the history of this plant. I walk in there and I thought I had to have all the answers. So I thought that I'm the general manager of the corner office. I'm going to be the people they're going to come to me and I'm going to, I'm going to read I'm going to dictate what's going on from the corner office. Right. And I guess, I don't know how long it took me. It wasn't that long, but probably in the first year, I started realizing that all the answers to all our problems are in the minds of the people that work for me. I don't have to have any answers. In fact, what I need to have is really good questions and have the ability to sit back and listen. And I think that's when the sort of the magic in leadership sort of started hitting me in that first manufacturing plant. I was like, oh, I don't have to have all this knowledge and just sit in the corner office and just dictate to people, okay, you do that, look at that, make sure that's right. No. I had to tap into the collective knowledge of the entire team. And I'm still working on this in my life, but I would say this is that the more that I've tapped into that collective wisdom and the collective knowledge of my team, the more successful I've been in my career. So, and if you think about it, and I love this because I've seen it so many times, is when companies bring in consultants, the first thing they do is they talk to the most experienced employees. They say, okay, what's going wrong here? And all right. How do you think we should fix it? And they go, okay, right. And they write that down. And then they put it in a report and they give it to the manager and they say, here's what's wrong with the company and here's how to fix it. And the manager goes, wow, that is really good. Here's another $1 million, and they pay these consultants a lot of money. And the consultants just go, okay, well, that was easy, right? But guess what? The leader can do that him or herself. You just go ask people. Like literally, that when I take over a plant now, that's what actually those are the questions I ask. I have one-on-one meetings with every employee and I say, what's working really well here today? What's working good? What's not working so well? Right. And if you were in my shoes, what's the first thing you would do in this role? And so and I have like 200 of these meetings and I'll have all these notes. And you know what? It's always interesting because it always comes down to like, there's 2 or 3 things that absolutely must be done. That's it. And then I do those things. And I do those things in the first few weeks and people go, wow, A, he listens, and B, he takes action, right? This is the kind of boss I want to follow, right? And so it seems like simple now as an older leader, but as a young leader, I never could understand that. Like I thought I'm promoted because I have all these advanced degrees and I have all this experience. It's like, no, you're just a caretaker. My job is not more important than the person plating that part in the back of the plant. My job is not more important at all. But my job is to make sure that person in the plant that's plating that part in the back of the plant has everything they need to be successful. And so, kind of in the inverted organization where the boss is actually on the bottom, not at the top. And I've learned that over the years. That's really important.
I just learned a lot in a couple of words because I have that. I suffer from that issue deeply because I don't know if it's an insecurity, but I'm always terrified by this idea of, I think it's an imposter syndrome, basically.
Oh,
So
big time.
I feel like I have to be over prepared and I have to give the proper instructions to the level where it's only retroactively that I can see that maybe I'm suffocating the good ideas that some people are trying to give me.
Yes. Yeah. You're right on track. I mean, imposter syndrome is something I've struggled with my whole life. So that's definitely something that is part of it. And you feel like you have to overcompensate for what you feel are your weaknesses. And again, we're going back to that idea about failure, right? Like we see everybody's success stories, but we know all our failure stories. For me, I mean, I remember when I first got in the submarine force, I was like, I can't believe I'm here. How did I sneak in here? I mean, these people are going to figure me out the whole time. I mean, until I was like, they pinned those dolphins on my chest. I'm like, maybe I belong here. Maybe I am. Maybe I do belong here. But if you struggle with imposter, if you struggle with that, then you know what I'm talking about. It's a weird feeling when everybody says, no, you do belong here. You're like, oh, okay, wow, that's cool. I didn't think I did, but I think that's important. And you touched on something that's really important, is that we do, as leaders, sometimes overpower the ideas of our people. And again, sometimes it's trying to overcompensate. We're like, well, I remember this time we did this, and you try to overpower, and people are sitting back going, well, that's not going to work here. But one of the things I learned, I did a lot of brainstorming over the years. Like every time we'd have a new year, I would have offsite meetings where I'd bring our leadership team together, and we talk about like the plans for the year, what are we going to achieve this year, and we'd have that discussion. And I remember that something that always struck with me is that the quietest person in the room always had the best idea. While we were all talking, like some people can think while they're talk, or some people just talk. But there's people that are quiet, that sit in the room and they're quiet. And in all of the big shifts in my career, the big changes we made in our companies over the years, always came from the quietest person in the room. And that's something that's always stuck with me. I write it in all my books to remind people that when some people are talking, right, there's one person or two people that are typically thinking. And you really want to call on those people. You want to get those little ideas, because they've been sitting there thinking the whole time while other people have been talking. And all of those breakthrough ideas have come from the quietest person in the room. So again, if you know that, then you'll tend to not be as overbearing, because you're just like, okay, what's that? What's Susan? You've been sitting here listening this whole time. What do you think? And man, Susan's got the answer. And you're like, dang it, I didn't need to talk. I just need to get, just to pay attention as a leader to who's participating, who's not participating, and where's that quiet idea that's going to change the company. Yeah. So yeah, that's a big thing. The other thing I would say, this is something that I learned too, that I never would have thought that it was important. I had a boss who, at the end of the day, I didn't have a lot of respect for him. He didn't do a lot of great things that would earn my respect, but he did one thing that I always think about, because he changed the way my business was run by a question. And I still think of it this day, like, was he brilliant or lucky? I never can understand. But this is the question. He said, he was a new leader, came to our business. I was running one factory. He was the division president. He came in, and so he calls me up one day. He was down in Florida. I was in North Carolina at the time. And he said, John, I need you to come down. I want to meet, talk to you about the business. And I'm like, okay, great. He said, now I need you to come down and present your business plan to me. I'm like, all right, okay, sounds good. So I had a business plan, what I'm doing with my business. So I went down there. And as soon as I got in the room, he didn't say like, hey, how are you? Where do you come from? What's your family background? What's your, how long you been in the business? Didn't care about anything. He's like, show me your business plan. I'm like, all right, let's jump right in there. Show him business plan. That's what we're doing, blah, blah. So he looks at it all. He goes, oh, and let me point this out. We had 70% market share in this business. It's 70% market share. We were crushing it. Nice. We were killing it. Right. And we were, we had plans to grow, another maybe 5% market share, and that was in my plans. This is how we're going to grow the business. These are the products we need to develop. This is what we're going to do. We think we get to 75% market share. And so we were killing it, and we had a plan to kill it more. Right. And he just looked at the whole thing and he went, he goes, I don't like it. He goes, what can you do to double your business? And I was like, dude, what's going on here? I just shared with you, I have 70% market share. I am killing it. No matter what I make, I can make profit. I can make, and everybody buys my products. We're killing it in the market. He goes, I need you to come back in 2 weeks with a plan to double your business. And I'm like, what? This guy, and I could tell you, I have the whole flight back from Florida. I was like, calling this guy names, and he he aggravated me because we were killing it. We were doing great. This guy comes in from the outside. Oh, you're going to double your business. Well, that's stupid idiot, you know? Wow. And then I got my team together, you know, I said, look, I got 2 weeks to develop a plan to double our business. And everybody said the same thing I said. You're stupid. That's impossible. Can't be done. Blah, blah, blah. And I remember just sitting there going, I'm like, and like, well, we got to think about it. What are some ideas? And I remember my marketing manager in the back, he was really being quiet. And I looked over there and I said, Steve, I said, what are you thinking about over there? He goes, maybe we're thinking about our business wrong. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We make this business, we were making current transformers, voltage transformers. I said, we make voltage transformers, current transformers. We're the leading supplier in the market. Like, what do you mean we're thinking about it wrong? He goes, maybe we're not in the CT and PT business, which is the abbreviations for this. Maybe we're in the sensor business. Maybe we're just all about sensing voltage and current. Are there other ways that we can sense voltage and current that are not in our portfolio today? And then an engineering manager goes, yeah, there's these things called sensors and they do this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, but is that a viable business? They're like, yeah, this company over here just started a line of it. This guy's doing it. And we started thinking about it. We're like, holy cow, we're not thinking about our business right. We were thinking about that we make current transformers, but really what we made was a way to measure current. And so what are the other ways to measure current? And so we went like, oh, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And then all of a sudden instead of 70% market share, we had about 20% market share when we changed the way we thought about the business. And so eventually I went back to the general manager. I presented the plan to double the business. We told him we were going to get into the sensor business. This is how we're going to do it. This is what we needed. And he's like, that's what I wanted to see from you from day one. And we ended up doing it. We ended up doubling the size of that business over time because that one leader asked one question. And it was one question that was almost almost felt like it was an insult to me.
Yeah.
You know? So why do I tell you this story? Because sometimes we have to challenge our people to do more than they think they can do. And it turns out a lot of times they can. And they're not thinking correctly about the situation. And I wasn't thinking correctly about the business. And through that process, you know, that one leader asked one question, it changed everything. And so I always think about that. Like, how do we challenge our people to do more than they think they can do? And when we do, sometimes it turns out they can do a lot more. Like, our mind is a limiting thing sometimes. Like, we don't really realize what we're fully capable of until someone challenges us and pushes us to do the impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. That I'm definitely going to make a clip of this story because that's very important because I've noticed with myself, with a lot of my peers, I won't say it's a problem of our generation, but we're quick to say I'm overwhelmed. We're quick to, if it's not partially automated for us already,
yeah,
we don't want to do all of that.
Oh yeah, it's hard work.
Yeah. And yeah, we definitely, yes. I'm glad I did this podcast. I really am. I'm learning so much. And I have another question here.
Sure.
Because I never thought about firefighting on a submarine. That never crossed my mind as a problem that could ever
yes.
on the planet.
Yeah.
How is that a powerful analogy for business leaders?
Yeah. So that's one thing that always surprises people. You know, people say, "Oh, yeah, I know. You know, Jon served on a submarine." You know, and then when I tell people I'm actually a qualified firefighter, they always say, "What do you mean you're a firefighter? You're not a qualified. I've never seen you wear a fireman's helmet and drive around in a red truck." I'm like, "No, but I am a qualified firefighter." And like, how do you know somebody's a qualified firefighter? Well, they've been on a submarine, because every crew member is trained as a firefighter. And you say, well, why is every crewman trained as a firefighter? Well, think about it. When you're like in a school or in your building or a business, the fire alarm goes off, or there's a fire in the business, right? What do? You call 911 and you run away from the fire outside to a gathering place, and you let the professionals take over, right? Like
Yes.
the people with the big jackets and the hats and the hoses, they're going to take care of the problem. Well, on a submarine, hundreds of miles from anyone, if a fire breaks out on a submarine, you're not calling 911. You got to take care of it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is that fires will start out small, and if you don't get to them and put them out quickly, they become larger. And then large fires on a submarine, they can light off weapons, damage systems. They can asphyxiate the crew very quickly. Heat and smoke will fill a submarine very, very quickly. If you look it up on Google, there's just been lots of fires, submarine fires that have been deadly. It's always a deadly situation when you have a fire in a submarine. So we were trained to run towards the fire, not away from the fire. So just like it, it's just the opposite of working, in a business. So when a fire starts, you run away, call 911, so we run towards the fire. Now, and we put it out before it gets larger. So, and what I always say is that fires are like problems in business, right? They start small, but when you don't address them, they get bigger, and sometimes they can put your business in jeopardy. So I've always trained my teams to run towards the problems, run towards the challenges we have at the business, and put it out before they get bigger. And one of the things I've noticed generally in corporate world is that people move away from problems, right? They're trying to manage their career. They don't want anything bad to be said about them. So, when there's a problem in business, it's like, ooh, like, not my problem. I'm staying away from that one, and it's like, it's like a bad baby diaper. Nobody wants to get near it, right? So, and that's why these problems end up getting bigger and out of control, because nobody wants to take care of it. Everybody wants to move away from it. So I train my teams to move towards the fire, move towards the problem, get it solved before it becomes a bigger issue. And that's just the analogy I typically use. And it comes from my firefighting days in the Navy. So
yeah, I see. It's very, I never, first, I'm extremely happy this is happening, but I never thought I would learn so much from a submarine.
Yes.
It's crazy the amount, because I think the level of, just from my uninitiated eyes, the level of commitment seems to be extremely high. Just how you were describing earlier, that one constant enemy that you have, for example, is the pressure outside.
Yeah.
And then just making sure that the entire, every sailor is properly educated or currently educating himself to make sure that he's capable of running most of the systems around him, without that being because an issue that I've seen in business, for example, is I've noticed these employees, for example, who are giving their best to learn everything about the business, and it starts creating this feeling of threat. Like, basically, upper level managers, not upper level, mid-level managers tend to start feeling threatened because maybe they were running their division business as usual, and this person is coming with these new ideas, but they're executing it. And instead of fostering that person to fostering those skills and that drive, they just come down, try to overload you and push you out, because we're not trying to change the program. And just seeing how much of a difference there is between that and what's happening in a submarine, it's so different, so different.
It is. It's almost like, I always liken it to people, the people that go up on the International Space Station, they live for months at a time,
Yes.
I always think that the best astronauts, so if we're going to take a mission to Mars, get a bunch of submariners. This is what we've done. We've locked ourselves in metal boxes, and we've for months at a time. This is what we're used to. So, but you need that mindset. Like, okay, the enemy is outside these, in the space station. I guess it's just like aluminum. I don't even know like how thick that, I don't know if I could do that job, because, that at least the submarine, I was trained to get to the surface. I knew how to get to the surface. I don't know how you get get back on ground when things go bad on the space station. But it's very similar. You're contained in this metal tube. You have to make your own water. You have to have food. You have to, all this stuff has to be, you have to be self-sustaining for months at a time. It's a very unique world. And again, they would make great Mars astronauts, the guys that I served with. So
I can imagine.
The other thing too is to think about the perseverance. I mean, you were talking about that we tend to not really truly understand what we're capable of, and I think the one thing that I learned in the submarine force is just being able to persevere over long periods of time in, I mean, not ideal situations, right? And just being able to, like, once you've done that, then, I write about in my last book, like my first patrol on the Tennessee, we had I was in the North Atlantic, a very, very heavy winter storms, and for almost 2 weeks, just the boat was just getting tossed about, and it was just violent. And I remember thinking, like, oh shoot, I had no idea this was going to be like this, right? Like, nobody told me that I would feel the ocean this deep, this deep in the water. But it was so bad that we were rolling like 30 degrees, 45 degrees on each way. And but getting through that was like one of the toughest periods of time in my life. And then now when I think back, it seems like anything I do that's difficult today, I always think back those 2 weeks in the North Atlantic in the middle of that winter storm, and I'm like, like that was hard. What I'm doing now is easy. So I think the other thing is we learn perspective on a submarine. We learned perseverance. We learned that if you could do something really hard for a long period of time, that you can pretty much do anything in your life. So I think that those are really powerful lessons that I took away from that like, oh, okay, that's, if I could do that, I can do this. Just nothing in my life has been ever as difficult as those 2 weeks in the North Atlantic. So like, all right, I can accomplish anything in my life,
Yes.
So that's good to have that perspective. So I think that's why we need to do hard things as people, because when you do hard things and you achieve something difficult, you then raise the benchmark for what you think you're capable of doing the next time. So you're like, well, I did that, I can do this. And then I did that, and I can do this. I'll tell you this, writing my first book was really hard. You talk about imposter syndrome, like, why would anyone read my book, right?
Yes.
And the first book was Eye of the Watch. You can see it on the right there.
Yes.
And that book has sold, I don't know, we're now close to 7,000 copies of that book has been sold all over the world. It's in the library at the FBI. Submarine captains have used it to train crews. It's nuts, right?
Congratulations.
Well, no. I'm not saying that to brag, but I faced a lot of like, I don't know that I could do this. This is very difficult to do. I don't know if I'm not an author, but I think I can write a book. Right. And so guess what? The next book was easy because I've said, I can do this, right? I have done this before. And so once you do something really difficult in your life and accomplish something very difficult, then it makes the next time you do something difficult that much easier. So I really do, to your listeners, do something really hard that seems impossible, because it will open up the potential for other things that you have never even hoped or dreamed about. So I think hard things are good things. We need to be doing hard things in our lives.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is something that is something I'll take to heart, because we need, I think there's this tendency to avoid challenge that I've made myself a victim of, there's no benefit in it. Yes, you're avoiding it now, but the consequences on the long term are unavoidable.
Yep.
Unavoidable.
Yeah, no, it's really true. You pay me now, pay me later, right?
yeah, exactly. And one of the last questions that I have is, how do you, when you have a new company or even an established organization, how do you attract talent that has endured that much more than you?
Yeah, that's a really good thing. It's one of the things I look for when I'm trying to hire people is, I'm looking for people that have displayed some level of, I call it, Angela Duckworth calls it grit. So Angela Duckworth's great book called Grit, and it's grit, as she defines, as passion and perseverance over the long term. So she defines it as someone with a goal so strong that they're able to overcome anything to achieve that goal. I'm looking for people that have displayed that in their lives. So when I'm hiring, I'm actually trying to look for those people that, like that military veteran who served 2 tours in Iraq, the single mom who put herself through college in the evenings, going to classes in the evenings, the guy that was adopted as a child and then that was abandoned, adopted, and then be able to achieve a massive go to college and achieve all this success on their own. I am looking for that story. Show me where you have had grit in your life, that you had so much passion for what you wanted to do that you're willing to do anything to achieve it. Now, here's why I say that, and especially as entrepreneurs, because I'm an entrepreneur myself and I know what it means. You have small teams, and that means every person in your team is absolutely critical to your success. I mean, if you have, if you have 5 people, you have a 20%, one person, 20% of your workforce, right? So you, and I would say this is that being a new business owner, being an entrepreneur is difficult. And anyone that says it's easy has never done it before, right? I mean, I see all these like Instagram memes like hustle, and it shows a guy standing in front of a private plane and a luxury car, like hustle. What would hustle? I've been hustling my whole life. Give me a break. It's not hustle. It's, are you willing to do the hard things over a long period of time? Because that's what it takes to be successful as an entrepreneur. It's about hard work. I mean, we look at Nike, right? Nike, they're a great company, right? Billions and billions of dollars. Phil Knight, overnight, right? Overnight success. Hell no. Read Shoe Dog. That's a great book, by the way. Shoe Dog. You want to be an entrepreneur? I think it's required reading to read Shoe Dog. It took Phil Knight and Nike and his team 18 years to make money. 18 years. What are you willing to do for 18 years to be successful? Do you have that kind of grit? That's what I'm looking for. I want someone who has that kind of a passion for something, that they're willing to spend 18 years working on it to be able to achieve that. Who would have given up after 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? And you know what? We would have said, hey, nice try, Phil. It's hard to do. It's hard to start a sneaker business. But everybody sees Nike, they see the success story. Oh, Nike, they're great. They're wonderful. I want to be the next Phil Knight. Oh, really? Are you willing to spend 18 years in the trenches eating ramen noodles? Because that's what he did. Look at anyone. Jeff Bezos. You want to be Jeff Bezos? Look what his story. Look what it took him. And people are like, I don't like Jeff Bezos. Okay, well, maybe he's a jerk, but look what he did in his life, right? I just think that Mark Cuban talks about this. He said, you need to be able to outwork and outlearn the other people around you. If you want to be successful, you have to outwork them. It's not about it's working smarter. Yeah, right. It's about working harder. It really is. And it comes right down to that. So I would say that, those are the kind of people I'm looking for. If you build a team, right, of people that have that level of mindset that like they're going to run through walls to be successful, then you're going to be successful. Those are the people I want to be surrounded by. I want to be motivated by my employees, by their level of passion. I want to be around people like that.
Yes.
And that's what I look for employees.
Yes. That's a criteria I will definitely keep in mind for future references. Yeah. And this is more of a personal question. Outside of work, outside of your career, how do you keep yourself centered and focused on what matters?
Ooh, that's so good. Thanks for asking that. People don't realize that. They think that leaders we just magically do this stuff. We don't. A good friend of mine, Mike Irwin, wrote a book called Lead Yourself First. It's such an important book. We need to take care of ourselves as leaders. Look, you've all heard the flight attendant, put on your mask before helping others. Why? Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't help other people. And we have to, as leaders, have to take care of ourselves. What do? I get up at 4 a.m. every morning. Now, I don't recommend this for everybody, but I do get up at 4 a.m. every morning. I spend my first minutes of my day I'm a Christian, so I study the Bible and I'm in prayer. So this is prayer, meditation, thinking about others in that quiet moments in the morning, right? And then what do I do? Right after that, I start writing. So I write first thing in the morning after my quiet time. What am I doing? I'm engaging my brain. I'm thinking about the next chapter in the next book or the next blog post that I'm writing. I'm writing and I'm thinking, I'm using my brain. And then right from there, I go right to the gym. I have a home gym. I spend an hour in the gym. I'm a weightlifter. I mostly powerlifting. So I'll go to my gym and I spend an hour of my day. So when I get ready for work in the morning, I've been up since 4 a.m. already put the work in. I've worked myself, worked my spirit. I've worked my physical body, and I've worked my mind. And those are the three things that we have to watch. Now, the other element is family. We can't neglect our family. When I come home from work, zero. I have zero to do, and that's just to spend time with my sons. They're grown now and out of the house, but spend time with my sons, spend time with my wife, and build those relationships, because you're going to need those relationships when things get tough. You're going to need your spouse who supports you as an entrepreneur, because things are going to get tough. You're going to wonder where the next dollar is coming from. You need your spouse to be on board too. And so many people neglect their relationship, their personal relationships, chasing a dream, and you just can't do that. You've got to center yourself, spiritually, physically, mentally, and then you got to take care of your family. If you do those things, then you've got a really good foundation to go help other people. You can put your mask on first, you can help other people.
Yes, yes. What part of the what passage in the Bible currently are you meditating on?
Well, to me, I'm studying 1 Samuel right now, and I'm just studying a couple of things. One was, everybody knows the story of David and Goliath, and they think, oh, it's little versus big, and that's a great entrepreneurial story. But it really wasn't that. It was more of a David. Goliath was insulting his religion, right, and kind of belittling the Israelites, and he's like, wait a second, no, you can't badmouth my God. You're going down, right? I got something bigger than you. I have a God that's bigger than you, and so that's kind of a cool, like I'm sort of digging deeper underneath the story behind the story, because you think of David and Goliath, you think of little guy, big guy, slingshot, but there's more to that story than you think. And so I think that through, for me at least, through prayer, meditation, through God's strengths, we can do things that are impossible. And so as an entrepreneur, guess what? You're going to be doing the impossible. I guarantee it. You're going to look at your bank account and you're going to go, I don't know how I'm going to make it through my next payroll. You're going to need that strength to be able to overcome the Goliaths in your life and your Goliaths in your business.
Yes, that there's a lot of those.
A lot of good stories. A lot of good stories that apply today. I'm just like, oh yeah, you hear that story. I think it's good to, even if you're not a Christian, is to read history and stories and reflect on people that have been in tougher situations than you. What did they do? How did they overcome it? I think stories help us with our imagination and to think that, oh, okay, what I'm facing is no more difficult than other people have in their lifetime. Autobiographies are great resources, and to read and to hear, hear stories of, you were asking me earlier about mandates, and why they don't work. And Martin Luther King Jr. is a great example of someone who built a vision, a dream, and he got people to follow the dream. And not through mandating it. It was through just building a vision of the future, right? And so we learn so much from studying history and studying great leaders of the past. And so I just, if you're not a Christian, or you don't have a religious background, there's other ways you can spend that time and reflection in the morning. So I just encourage that.
Yes, definitely. And I don't know which one to pick as a last question, though, so I will go with both. I'll start with the one that's more corporate. What is your vision for your company for the next 5 years?
Yeah, my goal with the business has always been the same: is to build the next great company in our industry. My industry is filled with very large competitors. I compete against General Electric is one of my competitors, just to tell you who I'm competing against. Right? Yeah. So all of my competitors are in the billions, and I'm in the millions. So yeah, I want to build the next great company in our business. And you know what did you, hopefully it's clear that I didn't say I want to get rich.
No, you haven't brought that up yet.
No, and if that happens, that's fine, but that's not my goal. My goal is to build the next great business in our industry. I want people to know my company's name, know what we stand for, and be able to trust us to give them the products they need. The money, that'll come. I'm not worried about that. I want to build the next great company in our industry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And if there's a talented engineer, salesperson, PR person out there who would like to join that vision, how can they reach out? How do they apply for a position?
Yeah, it's peak demand, peakdemand.com is the name of our company. So peakdemand.com, and there's a, contact us at the bottom of the page. You can send your resume in, and yeah, we love to have good people, but I want to look for people who've got passion, that have perseverance, and have got a little bit of grit under their fingernails. Someone that done some hard things. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So everybody who will be watching this in the future, you heard what the man said. Bring some grit. It's more important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And as to close it all, if there is a young person out there, and I know there's a bunch who are hoping to have that moment, yes, I've reached it. What would you tell them to focus on that journey?
You have got to put in the work, and you have to work harder than everyone else around you. There's just no shortcut to hard work. And if you want something, if it's really meaningful for you, it's really important to you, you need to outwork everyone around you for longer than they will, and you will achieve that goal. You do that, guaranteed. Hard work, perseverance. Look, I've gotten lucky in my life, and the way I've gotten lucky is just through hard work and being ready when the opportunities open the door. And I would just suggest that to everyone. Don't be a nub. Don't be a non-useful body, right? Be useful. Be a contributor to society. Don't be a consumer. Be a creator. And I think you will go far in this world, especially now where a lot of people are just consuming. And you can really stand out if you're a creator and not a consumer.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And I promise this is the last thing. I feel compelled, and if you don't want to, it's okay, but I feel compelled to ask you to pray for us before we end this episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I never thought. It's the first time I've ever done this. So, all right, Heavenly Father, we've had a great show. We've had a great discussion, and there's a lot of people listening on this podcast. I don't know how many people are listening. You only know who is going to hear this message. And I just pray that these words will inspire, especially young people, to really do something big in their lives, put their own dent in the universe, Lord. And only they know what that dent looks like and what they want to do. And so I would just pray that you would speak to them, and what words that they think are just really important, and what vision that they want to achieve, and make that really clear to them, Lord, and then give them the perseverance to attack those goals, and know that it's going to take a long time, but to work towards those achievements. And I pray this all through Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you. First time I've ever done that on a podcast.
It has to happen. Down. I will get every blessing I can.
I love it.
Yes, you have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.
Okay, very good. I enjoyed the discussion. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.